Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Now, this is going to be the first episode in a brand new series on the channel, which is based upon one of my favorite spiritual books of all time, and that is The Law of One. And so, The Law of One is a channeled work from the early 1980s by a group of three people who were dedicated channelers named Don Elkins, who's the questioner, Jim McCartney, who's the scribe, and Carla Rueckert, who was the channeler. This group ended up contacting an entity named Ra, who explained that it is a sixth density social memory complex. And I'm sure that most of you have no clue what that means right now, but don't worry, because you will. So Ra explains that they apparently visited ancient Egypt a few thousand years ago to dictate their message that they call the Law of One, as well as teaching them how to build the pyramids as healing centers, how to use crystals, the seven chakras, the tarot deck, the archetypical mind, and many other concepts such as these. But a few hundred years after they had stopped communicating with Egypt, their message had been severely distorted in a number of ways. And so, because of this, Ross says that they felt a sense of obligation or duty to eventually return and dictate the Law of One again to a group that had a lower probability of distorting their message. And so, that's why Ra contacted this group of Jim, Don, and Carla in the 1980s. This book is really, really remarkable and unique in a number of different ways, but most notably because it's like a PhD level dissertation in metaphysics. The only difficult thing about reading this book is that because Ra is orders of magnitude more intelligent than the average person, the language that they use can be very dense and intellectual, which can make it a little bit rocky and a little bit tricky to follow. So Ra always uses the most accurate possible word available for the message that they're trying to send. And so that means that the most of the words that Ra chooses are, well, let's just say very big words. So the book kind of has its own unique language that takes a little bit of time to adjust to, because Ra also will use verbiage to refer to concepts that are different than our verbiage of that same concept. So for example, instead of saying a person or human, Ra will say mind, body, spirit complex. So it does help to have someone who understands the language of the book to translate it for you, which is what I'm going to do and attempt to do in this series. I do recommend that anyone who's interested in this kind of material, they should read the books for themselves and listen to the books, because it's really an experience unlike any other. I've listened to the books 3 times through now, and each time I listen to them, it becomes more and more incredible. And the coolest part is you can actually listen to all 106 channel sessions from the 80s, all of it, if you go to their whole website, lawofone.info. So with that being said, let's get into the topic for today's video, which is going to serve as the foundation for every other lesson that we will learn in this series. And that is that the 7 densities of consciousness. Now, the subject is really interesting because it goes very deep into the science of reincarnation and the evolution of the soul. The number 7 is a very important number within the metaphysical structure of the universe. The 7 densities of consciousness correspond to each of the 7 energy centers in our body, the 7 musical notes on a scale, and the 7 colors within the rainbow. And so this topic will really make sense out of some of the mystery, some of the mysteries of life, evolution, and consciousness in a way that nothing else really can. So Ra explains that the universe is the mechanism for the one infinite creator to know and experience itself. There are infinite universes, which Ra calls octaves, and the one that we're in is merely one of the infinite number of octaves. Ra explains that the evolution of consciousness within each octave works in 7 major stages of densities. A density represents the entanglement of light within certain vibrational range. So the lower the density, the slower the vibratory rate and the less capacity for the expression of consciousness. The higher the density is a faster vibrational rate and more ability to express consciousness in its fullness. And that is what drives the engine of evolution. Now, evolution is a fundamental principle within the universe. Everything in creation must be an organic, authentic experience, which means that everything must come through evolution. So in the same way that everything within the physical world evolves, everything within the metaphysical world also evolves, including consciousness. So if we go all the way back to the formation of our solar system, we can see what happened at the beginning of the formation of the first density of consciousness. The first density is that of beingness or awareness, and is associated with the red ray or root chakra energy center and the atomic body. This includes all organic matter, which are the four elements of earth, water, fire, and air. As the sun condensed into our star and planets began to form, the earth spent billions of years in a timeless state of being. And after a few billion years of rocks, magma, water, and air interacting with one another, the friction of all of this interaction eventually began to evolve consciousness into the second density, which is the density of growth and movement, and is associated with the orange ray sacral chakra and chemical body. The second density includes all biological life and organic matter that has autonomous movement, all the way down from microbial life up to the plants and animals. In this density, consciousness becomes aware of different proton or portions of itself communicating with one another. And through this communication, a second stage is reached where consciousness has learned the lessons of beingness and can now begin to respond to its environment through this newly learned awareness. So, as it begins to generate a realization of space and time, consciousness takes on a new vehicle of exploration. The latest stage of second density would be animals who become pets, and through the interactions with humans, such as being given a name, boundaries, and affection, the animal begins to develop a sense of self-awareness, which allows consciousness to begin evolving into the third density. The third density is that of self-awareness and choice. It's associated with the yellow ray or solar plexus chakra and also chemical body. The third density is where each and every one of us find ourselves right now, and it's actually the shortest and most intense of all the 7 density levels in terms of incarnation cycle. This is because 2 major factors: the introduction of polarity and what Ra calls the veil of forgetting. The veiling process occurs in third density to shroud each entity's memory from the previous incarnations, so that there's no awareness that the soul is on an evolutionary journey. This allows each entity to make completely authentic choice between the positive and negative polarities. The catalyst for evolution in third density is psychological suffering, and this is why the third density is so difficult in comparison to all the others. Suffering forces consciousness to gain freedom from the ego, which was built through the second density, and this allows the entity to eventually become truly autonomous and possess free will. Catalyst in third density is very high because both polarities must be represented in equal proportion. The formation of the ego creates a sense that the entity is separate from everyone and everything, which initially creates a barbaric and hostile behavior at the beginning of third density. This is exactly what we witness in our own human history. But as thousands of years go by and many incarnations are experienced, the soul learns the lessons of love and understanding and begins to remember that it actually is an eternal being having a temporary physical experience. At this point, the choice between 2 polarities is made. If an entity decides that it prefers the negative polarity, then it begins its evolutionary journey on the service to self path, or the STS path. If it chooses a positive polarity, it begins its journey on the service to others path, or the STO path. So everything about the soul's evolutionary journey hinges around this choice point in the third density that we experience right now. The following 4th through 7th densities are spent exploring, learning, and enhancing the chosen polarity. So we could summarize that the first 3 densities by saying that consciousness sleeps in the rock, it dreams in the animal, and it awakens in the human. What's really cool about this understanding is that it gives you a deep sense of appreciation and gratitude for the life that you are now living. Because in order to get to that point where your soul understands all the complexities and variables of the human experience, your consciousness had to first spend billions of years evolving as rock and water and plants and animals, and not to mention probably hundreds of human lifetimes. And so nothing I've shared thus far is really new information, because we've already known that in the first 3 stages of densities of consciousness exist, because we can observe them and we can see them in our own life experiences. What we don't know, however, is where the evolution of consciousness goes after the third density. And this is where Ra takes the liberty of informing us. And as you'll see, just like everything else we've ever discovered, the truth of how our universe actually works is always far more amazing than we could ever possibly predict it. The fourth density is that of love and understanding and is associated with the green ray or heart chakra and possesses a chemical and light body. Ross states that the average lifespan of fourth density beings is around 90,000 years, and then the full evolutionary cycle is around 30 million years. Also, according to Ross, our planet became a fourth density planet in the year 2012. What this means is that our planet frequency is now hospitable to begin evolving fourth density bodies. This will obviously take hundreds of thousands of years, but the signs of this evolutionary process are already becoming apparent on the planet. We can actually see the shift in the evolution towards fourth density love in our society because of the dramatic changes in social justice, equal rights for minorities, and awareness of global corruption, which have exploded since the year 2012. The shift into fourth density explains the acceleration of spiritual awakenings, technological advancements, and global communication, as the world is becoming increasingly unified and less divided. And this is why so much of the corruption and hypocrisy of our world is currently being exposed. In the fourth density, cross communication between densities opens up gradually as the veil gradually begins to disappear. This is why we also see a huge increase in channeled works since the 1970s. And this will become increasingly common in the later stages of fourth density. We're talking millions of years in the future. Individual beings begin to join or merge consciousness together to form what is called a social memory complex. These individual entities become a larger entity that serves as a sort of walking library, where each entity in the social memory complex has access to everyone else's memories and knowledge. And this process continues to happen through the fifth and sixth entities as social memory complexes begin and become larger and more powerful. As a quick side note, the service to self path through the fourth density with an intense narcissism, self-perception, and hatred of others, this is extremely negative. And this type of being skips over the green ray chakra because it sees love and understanding as completely useless. And because the entity skips an entire energy center, the evolution through the fourth density is much longer and more difficult for the negative path. This is why almost every channel book ever written uses the terms we and us instead of I. Because after the third density, individual consciousness becomes more and more unified as love increases and spiritual entropy decreases. And so this is also why teachers such as Abraham Hicks and Bashar will say we and us when they speak instead of I, because the entity that they are channeling is a social memory complex. This is also why at the beginning of the Bible, it states in Genesis, "Let us create man in our image and after our likeness." And so, due to the formation of these social memory complexes, communication quickly becomes more and more telepathic. And this results in the complete disappearance of an ability to be dishonest. And so, as the veil of forgetting gradually disappears over the coming millennia, we're going to see more and more people commonly being born who remember their past lives as well. So, being in a third density incarnation, each one of us currently possesses a yellow ray chemical body. Each density level has its own energy body that corresponds to that energy center. So, a first density or red ray body would be purely atomic, such as a rock or water. And this body has much less ability to express consciousness than an orange, or say yellow ray body of the animal or human. But when you dream at night, or if you know how to astral project, the body that you take with you is your indigo ray or pineal gland body, while your yellow ray chemical body is sound asleep in bed. In the indigo ray body, which is essentially made of pure light, can walk through walls and transform itself and basically do whatever it wants. That is the type of body that a sixth density being possesses natively. All physical material is essentially electromagnetism, and so light bodies exist farther up the scale of electromagnetism, which means that they have more ability to express consciousness. So you can see that there's a really drastic difference in the ability to express consciousness at each density level because of the sliding scale of electromagnetism. So it doesn't mean that it's impossible for us at this level to do things like physical healing or psychic powers or telepathy. It just means that it's much more difficult due to these heavy, dense chemical bodies that we possess. So if a fourth density extraterrestrial being came to visit us here in physical form, they would be able to do things and know things that would appear godlike to us, in the same way that our ability to use verbal language and make tools and technology appears godlike to a second density animal. And so with that in mind, the difference between fourth and fifth density is equally as drastic. The fifth density is that of wisdom and light, and is associated with the blue ray or throat chakra, and is the first body in the densities to be entirely made of light. There are certain imbalances in the fourth density that seek to become balanced in the fifth density, because there's an overzealousness in the fourth density service that can lead to martyrdom, meaning the sacrificing of oneself in order to serve another self. That happens all the time. And so with the fifth density balances out of love and understanding learned in the fourth density with the wisdom of the fifth. Later density souls do often choose to incarnate back into the third density to be of service and bringing the higher frequency to the third density plane of the choice. Think of Martin Luther King Jr., Jesus Christ, even the Buddha, incarnated here again to further the evolution of humanity. This is what the term an old soul refers to. So Mother Teresa, or again, Martin Luther King Jr., are perfect examples of fourth density beings, while a fifth density being would be akin to the Buddha or an enlightened master or sage. It's almost a guarantee that many of the enlightened masters we know of are fifth density souls who have incarnated into third density to be of service to our collective by bringing their light and wisdom. Because the fifth density body is one of light, this is why angels in every spiritual text throughout history are always said to be beings of light. The fifth density being retreats completely in itself and spends much of its incarnation alone, learning the lessons of wisdom. This is essentially where the total selflessness of fourth density learning meets the total self-sufficiency of the fifth. The lessons of fifth density are knowing that all is unfolding according to divine purpose, and right action is only taken when it is felt to be appropriate and honoring to the free will of the other self. Fifth density beings have almost total freedom in time and space, such as the ability to teleport through thought, the power to manipulate consciousness to create matter out of light, and so forth. Basically, anything you could do in a lucid dream, a fifth density being can do in this dimension. By the fifth density, social memory complexes have become much larger and more powerful, usually containing an entire planetary civilization. Each density level reaches for the next one, and so you could say it's pulled by the spiritual gravity of the following density level. So in the same way that the third density is pulled by the gravity of love and understanding in the fourth, the fifth density is pulled by the desire to attain perfect balance of love and wisdom in the sixth density. The sixth density is that of unity and balance, and is associated with the indigo ray or the third eye chakra, and is also a light body. The sixth density turns its gaze towards the balance of love and wisdom. It's an extremely fine-tuned state of consciousness, as perfect balance between love and wisdom has been achieved. However, Ross states that the negative path cannot progress past early sixth density because the spiritual entropy becomes too great by this point. And so the negative entity, realizing in its gathered wisdom that further evolution is impossible, then concedes to the path of love and light and reverses its polarity after, and of course, much internal struggle. On the positive path of sixth density, all polarization that can be achieved through service to others has already been achieved. And so this is when the sixth density soul essentially turns backwards in time and becomes what we call the higher self, in order to complete its polarization through the sixth density. While Ra does not state how long a fifth density incarnation cycle is, they do state that a sixth density incarnation is around 75 million years. After this time period, the soul begins to approach the final stage in the evolution of consciousness. The seventh density is the gateway density and is associated with the violet ray or crown chakra in a light body. This is the final density of this octave. This is where all personal identity and memory is lost and you merge back with source. This doesn't actually mean that you lose anything, but that you actually gain everything else. Not so much is known about what the seventh density is like, because as Ross states, They have not progressed that far yet. And so they only know what the small details on their own seventh density masters have shared with them. So what we do know is that the seventh density serves as teachers and guides to the higher self of sixth density. But it's essentially as if the seventh density has 1 foot in eternity and 1 foot still in manifestation, right before the merge is complete and total oneness with the creator is achieved. Everything in creation, down from the first density of a rock, is being pulled by this ultimate desire to merge back with the all. After 7th density is completed, the 8th density is essentially the first density of the next octave. In the same way, the 8th note of a musical scale is actually the tonic or the octave above that same scale. A brand new universe with brand new experiences of that which is, well, we cannot possibly imagine. To give you one last caveat to the 7 densities, Ross states that each density level has 7 sub-densities within it, which each have 7 sub-densities, and so on for infinity. So there's no actual dividing line between the densities of consciousness, as everything just exists on the spectrum. But this is essentially the way that the higher density beings have mapped out for us to kind of easily understand. So as far as you can see, the evolution of consciousness works much the same way as grades in school or belt system in martial arts. Once a certain grade has been mastered or a certain belt has been mastered, there comes this natural desire to continue progressing. The innate desire that all of us have to continue progressing in everything that we do is actually the pull from the creator that is compelling us to continue evolving and growing and eventually merging back with source. Everything in all of creation, even the negative path, if everything eventually returns to the same source. So not only is the only not only is this the only life that you have, it's actually just the beginning. The incarnation that all of us find ourselves in right now is actually a type of consciousness kindergarten. We're here to learn the nature of polarity and eventually make our choice between the two, negative or positive. And based upon the choice that we make, we will spend the rest of our soul's evolution progressing up the densities of that polarity. Neither choice is right or wrong. It's simply up to you. So I hope you enjoyed this lesson and found it incredibly inspiring, empowering, and uplifting as I do. And if you do enjoy the lesson, then just strap in your seatbelts, because this is just the beginning of the amazing knowledge and insights that the Law of One has to offer. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next episode.